She screamed his name so loud the guards froze, but Henry kept walking away from her, as if something inside that room was more terrifying than a battlefield. The heavy doors slammed shut behind him, and everyone in the corridor smelled it too, the sharp, rotten stench that crawled through the air like poison. One of the ladies-in-waiting covered her mouth and whispered, shaking, "God have mercy, what is happening to the Queen?" And trembled alone in that candle-lit chamber, gripping the sheets with white knuckles, tears burning down her face. "Henry, please, don't leave me like this," she cried. Her voice cracked, desperate, terrified of the silence that replaced him. Outside, the king leaned against the stone wall, chest heaving like he had stared into hell itself. His hands shook uncontrollably. "That smell," he whispered to his advisor Thomas Cromwell, "it is not human. Something is wrong inside her, something cursed." Cromwell's eyes narrowed as he stepped closer, lowering his voice so the servants could not hear. "Your Majesty, that is not sickness. That is a sign. People already fear she brings death wherever she goes. If word spreads," he paused, letting the fear seed itself. "They will say the Queen is touched by the devil." Henry's jaw tightened. Rage and horror twisted inside him, but beneath all of it, something darker, humiliation. He had fought Rome, torn England from the Church, defied the world to make her his queen. And now the night that should have proven his victory collapsed under a smell that clung to him like rot from an open grave. And pounded on the door from the other side, her voice breaking into a scream. "Come back. Please, Henry, look at me. You cannot leave me alone." But the guards refused to open it. Even they took a step back from the door, covering their faces, staring nervously at each other. Cromwell leaned in closer, whispering with slow calculation, "If the people knew what came from between her legs tonight, they would call her a monster. They would blame you. And then, very softly, we can still fix this." Henry's face turned pale. His voice shook when he spoke. "What do you mean, fix this?" Cromwell gave a thin smile, cold, controlled, like a man who had already won something. "Let me handle it. Just say the word." Henry did not answer. He just closed his eyes, but he could not escape the sound of her crying behind the door. It echoed through the hallway like a ghost screaming from the grave. The torches flickered, as if the wind itself carried a warning. Deep inside that locked room, and sobs suddenly stopped, replaced by a chilling whisper, trembling and broken, but sharp enough to crawl under skin. "Henry, something inside me is moving." And for the first time, even the king, brutal, feared, unstoppable, felt true fear. Henry's blood ran cold when he heard those words from behind the heavy wooden door. "Something inside her is moving." He stared at Cromwell, searching his face for an answer, but Cromwell only stepped back, pretending to be calm, hands folded behind him like a man watching a storm about to break. The guards looked terrified, each one refusing to go near the door, and the thick silence in the corridor felt like the air before a lightning strike. The king forced himself to speak, voice low and shaking. "Tell the physician to examine her." But no one moved. Not a single guard. Even the torches along the wall crackled violently as if the flames were afraid too. Inside the chamber, Anne's breathing turned into sharp gasps. She pressed her hand to her stomach, eyes wide with terror. "Help me, please," she whispered to no one, because no one dared to step inside. The shadows danced around her like living creatures, crawling across the floor and walls, stretching long black arms toward her. Every candle in the room flickered, then suddenly exploded into darkness except one, burning weakly in the corner like a dying star. Cromwell glanced toward the king. "This is no ordinary sickness. She is cursed, Your Majesty. And if anyone learns what happened tonight, everything you built will fall apart." Henry grabbed Cromwell by the collar, eyes burning with rage. "Do not speak of curses. I will not lose everything because of fear." But the truth was visible in his trembling hands. He was already afraid. A sudden deep thud rattled the chamber door, like something heavy had struck it from within. The guards jumped back. And screamed again, louder than before, but the scream changed halfway, breaking into a sound no human throat should make. A twisting, broken, animal-like howl that echoed through the stone halls. The king stepped forward, reaching for the door, but then he stopped, because he smelled it again. Stronger. Wet. Rotting. Like bodies left unburied in the sun. Cromwell whispered, voice calm like a man who already saw the ending, "Your Majesty, she is no longer the woman you fought the world for." Henry's eyes filled with something between grief and hatred. He turned away from the door, shaking his head slowly, refusing to look back. "She will destroy me," he said, voice hollow. "Do whatever must be done." And heard him. Every word. And through the door came her final trembling breath, soft, broken, heavy with betrayal. "Henry, you promised." Outside, a cold wind rushed down the corridor, blowing out every torch at once, leaving the king and Cromwell standing in darkness. Everything changed in that silence. The castle stayed silent after that scream, but the silence was worse than the noise. It felt like the walls were holding their breath. Henry stood frozen in the dark hallway, unable to move, unable to forget the sound he had just heard from behind the door. It echoed inside his skull like a curse he could not escape. He pressed his hands against his face, whispering to himself, "What have I done?" Cromwell stepped closer, his voice low and steady, like a man guiding someone already drowning. "Your Majesty, we must act before anyone else learns what happened in that room. If the court hears that smell, that scream, they will turn against you. The people will call you weak, or cursed." Henry didn't answer. He just stared at the cold stone floor, breathing heavily, sweat collecting on his forehead. It was the first time in his life he looked small. Cromwell continued, each word careful and calculated. "We say nothing. We send guards to take her away before sunrise. We claim she is unwell. Quietly. No questions." He paused, letting it sink in. "And then, we end this." The king's voice cracked. "End her." Cromwell did not blink. "Before she ends you." Inside the chamber, and dragged herself across the floor, hands shaking, nails scraping stone. Her body felt like fire and ice tearing apart from the inside. She whispered Henry's name again, softer, weaker, but full of grief more than pain. "Please, don't leave me alone in the dark." But there was no answer. Only the moan of the wind through the window. Suddenly, Anne felt something cold touch her ankle, like a hand, but not human. She screamed, scrambling backward, slamming against the wall. Her breath stopped. Her eyes widened. Something moved in the darkness near her feet, something she could not see but felt crawling under her skin. Outside, Henry turned to walk away, forcing himself not to look back. Every step sounded heavier than the last, like someone dragging chains. The guards followed, their eyes lowered, none daring to speak. Cromwell remained standing near the door, listening to the silence that followed. He smiled, a small, satisfied smile that disappeared as fast as it appeared. "Tomorrow," he whispered to himself, "England will be free from its queen." But somewhere deep inside the chamber, something whispered back. A voice so cold and sharp that every candle in the hallway flickered to life at once. "You are wrong, Cromwell," the voice rasped. "The real hell is only beginning." Cromwell froze. He had not imagined it. And was not alone in that room anymore. The castle did not sleep that night. Every servant, every soldier felt something was deeply wrong. A thick fog rolled across the courtyard, silent and unnatural, pressing against the windows like a living thing. Inside the hallway, the guards stood stiff as statues, staring at the chamber door they were ordered to open, but none dared to touch it. One of them, a young soldier named Rowan, swallowed hard and whispered, "I'm not going in there." I heard her voice change. That wasn't human. Another guard glared at him, trying to hide the fear shaking in his hands. "We follow orders. The king said remove her by sunrise." Rowan shook his head, stepping back. "You didn't hear what I did. Something else is inside with her. Something alive." Cromwell approached them, expression calm but eyes sharp. "Enough. Open the door." But before anyone moved, a sound came from inside the chamber. A low, dragging scrape, like nails or bones scraping stone. Slow. Heavy. Wrong. Every guard stiffened, the hallway falling silent. Then came the voice. Not a scream. Not crying. A whisper, soft and broken, yet echoing as if spoken from a grave. "Help me, please, it's dark. I can't see." Rowan's eyes filled with terror. "That's not her. That's something pretending to be her." Cromwell's face hardened. His voice cut through the fear. "Open the door. Now." But the guards did not move. Their boots felt nailed to the floor. The torchlight flickered violently, shadows bending and crawling across the walls like long black fingers. Suddenly, the chamber door shook, hard, as if something threw its weight against it from inside. The sound crashed through the hall, and every guard stepped backward at once. A second slam hit, strong enough to crack the wood. Dust fell from the ceiling. Horses outside the castle screamed. Rowan whispered trembling, "Sir, whatever is behind that door is trying to get out." Cromwell gritted his teeth. "Then we must act before it does." The oldest guard, Sir Halberd, finally spoke, voice rough. "I served the king for 20 years. I fought men twice my size. I cut down enemies on the battlefield. But I will not open that door." He pointed to the stone floor. "There is blood seeping from underneath. Look." Everyone looked down. A thin line of dark red liquid slid across the stones, slow and collecting into a small pool. But what made their skin crawl was the smell rising from it, salt, rot, and death. The same smell that made Henry run from his own queen. Rowan stepped back, hand shaking over his mouth. "God save us." Then came the whisper again, louder, choked, and filled with rage instead of fear. "Let me out." Cromwell stepped back, for the first time losing control of his expression. His voice trembled when he spoke. "Prepare yourselves. At sunrise, we open that door." But none of them noticed that on the other side of the corridor, watching from the shadows, stood King Henry. His face pale, eyes wide, breath shaking. He heard every word. And he whispered to himself, voice cracking. "What have I unleashed?" The door shook again, harder. Something wanted freedom. The sky outside was still black when the castle bells rang once, a single deep note that echoed through every stone like a warning. No one had touched them. Every guard turned toward the sound, fear crawling up their spines. Cromwell stared down the hallway toward the chamber door, jaw tight, heartbeat loud in his ears. "We move at sunrise," he whispered again, but no one answered. They all heard it, something inside the room breathing. Slow. Heavy. Wet. Like lungs filled with water. Rowan gripped his sword so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I swear something is pressing against the door. Like it's smelling us." Then everything fell silent. Completely silent. No wind. No breath. No movement. The castle itself seemed to stop. Even the flames of the torches froze without flickering, stuck unnaturally still. And then, the lock clicked. Very slowly. All by itself. The guard stumbled backward. Rowan shook his head violently. "No. No, don't open." He didn't finish, because the door creaked open a few inches, the sound stretching long and painful, metal grinding like bones snapping. A cold draft flooded out, crawling over their skin like icy fingers. The rotten smell exploded into the hallway, thicker and stronger, forcing several men to gag and step back. Cromwell lifted his sleeve to his face, choking. "Hold your ground." The door opened wider, slow, steady, deliberate, until they could see inside. The chamber was completely dark except for one candle burning on the floor, but the flame didn't stand straight. It bent sideways, pointing toward something in the shadows that none of them could see. And then they saw the blood. It was everywhere. On the floor, the walls, the bed sheets, smeared in long streaks, as if someone had been dragged around violently. But what froze everyone in place was the voice that came next. Soft. Calm. Too calm. "Good morning, gentlemen." Anne Boleyn stepped forward from the darkness, barefoot, nightdress torn, hair wild around her face. Her skin looked pale like marble, lips almost blue. But her eyes glowed with a sharp unnatural light that made Rowan drop his sword in shock. She smiled, slow and cold. "Why are you trembling?" she whispered. "I thought you came to help." No one moved. No one breathed. Then something shifted behind her, hidden in the darkness. A heavy, wet thump, followed by the sound of dragging across stone. Something large. Something alive. Something waiting. Rowan stuttered, voice breaking. Where is the physician? Where is Lady Madeline? They were inside with you." Anne's smile widened too far, stretching her lips unnaturally, like skin tearing at the corners. "They're still here," she whispered. She lifted her hand and dropped something onto the floor. It rolled forward slowly, until the torchlight revealed it. A severed hand. The guards screamed and stumbled backward, panic exploding like fire. Cromwell went pale, gripping the wall to steady himself. "Demon, she is a demon." And tilted her head slowly, staring at him with dead, empty eyes. "No, Cromwell," she whispered. "I am what you made." Behind her, something crawled into view, long, thin limbs bent the wrong way, skin stretched tight over bone, moving with a wet clicking sound that made every man in the hall want to run. Henry watched from the corner, shaking uncontrollably, tears filling his eyes. His voice came out broken, barely audible. "Anne, what did you become?" She turned her glowing eyes toward him, and everything went silent again. "What you feared." And the thing behind her began to stand. The creature behind and rose slowly, joints cracking like breaking branches, its shadow stretching across the floor until it swallowed the guards' feet. The men backed up until their armor clanged against the stone walls, but none of them dared to run. Their bodies refused to move, as if terror itself chained them in place. The candle flame inside the chamber bent again, pointing directly at the creature, revealing pieces of it little by little, an arm twisted backward, ribs pushing through skin, a head hanging unnaturally low as if the neck was broken. Its breathing rattled, wet and sharp, like someone drowning. Rowan whispered through shaking lips, that came out of her. And turned her head toward him slowly, her hair falling like black vines over her face. She didn't blink. She didn't even breathe. "Not out," she said softly. "Through." The creature stepped forward, long fingers scraping the stone, leaving deep gouges behind. Every step sounded like bones grinding together. The guards lifted their swords, but their hands trembled so violently the blades shook like leaves in a storm. Henry stumbled back, hitting the wall behind him. "Anne, stop this. Whatever you are doing, stop, please." And looked at him with those glowing eyes that didn't look human anymore. Her voice had no warmth left in it. "All I ever wanted was your love. You gave me your fear instead." Cromwell found his voice, though it cracked in panic. "This is witchcraft. She must be killed, now." The creature snapped its head upward at the word killed, revealing a face twisted beyond recognition. Its mouth stretched open too wide, lined with teeth like broken glass. It let out a sound, half scream, half roar, that felt like it shook the entire castle. Every torch extinguished at once. Darkness swallowed everything. Someone screamed. Something crashed. Metal hit stone. Bodies ran blindly into each other. The creature moved fast, too fast, wet footsteps slapping against the floor, followed by ripping sounds and gurgling cries cut short. Henry's hand searched the darkness, shaking, desperate to find something real. "Anne, please, tell it to stop. I beg you." Anne's voice floated through the blackness, eerily calm, close but impossible to see. "I begged you too, Henry. You left me in the dark. Now you will learn what waits there." The creature's breath grew louder, right in front of him. Henry froze, every muscle turning to stone. Then a torch burst back to life, flickering weakly, revealing Rowan pinned to the wall, blood pouring down his chest, his eyes wide and empty. The creature's head turned toward Henry. Anne stood beside it, different now, her skin glowing faintly, veins dark, smile cold as winter. "Run, Henry," she whispered. "I want to see how a king looks when he begs for his life." And for the first time, King Henry VIII ran. Not as a king. Not as a man. As prey. Henry's boots slammed against the stone floor as he ran through the long corridor, breath ragged, sweat burning down his face. The castle that once bowed to his every step now felt like a maze designed to trap him. Every hallway looked the same in the darkness, every corner felt like a dead end. His crown had meant nothing the moment fear grabbed his throat. Behind him came the sound he couldn't outrun, wet footsteps, uneven and fast, the creature dragging something heavy across the floor with every step. It wasn't running. It didn't need to. It knew he couldn't escape. Cromwell sprinted beside him, gasping for breath, armor clattering. "Your Majesty, we must gather soldiers, archers, anything." Henry grabbed his arm, voice shaking. "No one will fight that. You saw their faces. They know we're dead if it catches us." A violent crash echoed from behind, the sound of bodies thrown like dolls. Screams followed, short and sharp, then silence. One by one, the guards protecting their king were gone. Henry didn't look back. He couldn't. "Cromwell," Henry whispered between breaths, trying not to collapse, "what was that thing? What came out of her?" Cromwell wiped blood from his cheek, shaken. "I don't know. Maybe the rumors were true. Maybe she made a pact with." A voice cut through the corridor, floating like cold smoke. "Henry." Anne's voice. Soft. Echoing. Everywhere at once. Henry stumbled, almost falling. Cromwell pulled him back up, eyes wide. "She's trying to break you. Keep moving." They turned the corner and slammed into two guards who nearly dropped their weapons when they saw the king alive. "Protect the king," one shouted, raising his sword. But then everyone heard it. A slow, deep growl rolled through the hall, vibrating the stone beneath their feet. The torches trembled, flames stretching sideways as if pulled by invisible hands. The guards stepped back, terror swallowing all their bravery. One whispered, voice trembling, "That sound, that is not something God made." Henry pressed his back to the wall, shaking. "Hold the line. Buy us time." The guards forced themselves forward, lifting their swords, hands trembling uncontrollably. One whispered a prayer under his breath. Henry and Cromwell ran past them, hearts pounding, turning a corner toward the old stairway leading to the chapel. Then it happened. The creature dropped from the ceiling in front of the guards, landing with a wet crack that made everyone flinch. Its limbs bent at impossible angles, head hanging upside down, face inches from the floor. It lifted its eyes, glowing white, and let out a sound like 1,000 whispers screaming at once. The guards didn't even swing. They died screaming. Henry covered his ears, but the sound still clawed into his skull. Cromwell pulled him up the stairs, shouting, "Go! Go!" Halfway up, Henry froze. And was already standing at the top of the stairs. Motionless. Waiting. Her eyes locked onto his, glowing in the torchlight. She smiled slowly, calmly, as if welcoming guests to dinner. "You wanted me gone, Henry," she whispered. "So why are you running toward me?" Cromwell pushed Henry behind him. "Stay back, witch." And tilted her head, amused. "You still think this is mine?" "No, Cromwell. This is yours. You opened the door." The creature climbed the stairs behind them, each step shaking the stone, trapping them between death and something worse. And lifted her hand, fingertip dripping blood. "You chose this ending." The torches all exploded at once, plunging everything back into blackness. Henry screamed. The storm struck the palace just after midnight, shaking the stone walls until candles toppled and shattered. Servants ran through the hallways, whispering prayers under their breath, clutching crosses like weapons. No one understood what was happening, but every soul felt it, an invisible hand choking the air. Henry stood alone in his chamber, trembling like a hunted animal. His crown lay on the floor, forgotten, and sweat poured down his face despite the freezing wind blowing through the broken window. He could still hear it, that wet breathing, like something dragging itself across the stones. He shut his eyes tightly, but the smell was already there. Rotten fish. Rotten flesh. The scent of disease rising from between her legs. He gasped, covering his mouth as bile crawled up his throat. "Leave me," he whispered into the darkness, voice cracking. "You're dead. You're gone. You cannot touch me anymore." But the darkness moved. The shadow near the door thickened, twisting into the shape of a woman, thin bones, tangled black hair dripping like seaweed, her head hanging at a broken angle as though the executioner's blade had struck again. Her dress was torn, soaked in blood, and between her legs something black and wet dripped to the floor. Henry stumbled backward, knocking over a table. The guards outside heard his scream and rushed in, swords raised, but froze, their faces turning white. They saw her too. Lady Anne, the queen he abandoned, the woman he betrayed. Her voice came like wind through a tomb. "You wanted freedom, Henry. You wanted a pure wife. But you left me to rot." Henry's breath shattered into sobs. "I never meant." A crack echoed. Her spine straightened with a sickening snap, and her severed head slowly lifted into place, eyes glowing white. "You cursed yourself the night you smelled death on me. You thought it was my shame. It was your punishment." The room shook violently, torches exploding into sparks. Guards dropped their swords, clutching their ears as a scream tore through the chamber, a sound so sharp and unnatural that the stone walls bled dust like sand pouring from a broken hourglass. And stepped closer, and every step left a trail of blood-soaked water on the marble floor. Henry's legs gave out. He collapsed, crawling backward until he hit the wall. His voice disappeared, stolen by terror. "I will follow you," she whispered. "I will crawl from my grave every night. I will breathe my stench into your dreams. Until you beg for death." Her fingers, long, skeletal, and ice blue, reached for his throat. And then the torches died. Darkness swallowed the palace. Not a single scream was heard after that moment. Only the sound of dripping water, and the smell of something rotten spreading through the halls. To be continued. When dawn finally crawled over the horizon, the palace looked like a battlefield. Guards lay unconscious across the stone floors, their faces twisted in terror, some with blood leaking from their ears. The doors of Henry's chamber hung snapped from their hinges as if ripped apart by something far stronger than any man. But the king was nowhere to be found. His bed was torn apart, sheets shredded like claw marks from an animal. The marble floor was smeared with long trails of something dark and slimy, stretching from the chamber door through the corridor and down the grand staircase, like something had been dragged. Every few feet, puddles of foul water soaked the floor, thick and acidic, burning holes in the rugs. No one dared speak. No one dared breathe too loudly. Until a scream burst from the courtyard. Dozens of soldiers ran outside and froze in horror. Henry VIII, the most feared king in Europe, lay sprawled on the cold ground like a discarded doll. His skin was pale blue, lips dark purple. His hands were clawed around his throat, frozen in a final moment of desperate struggle. His mouth was wide open, silent, as though death itself had stolen his voice before he could release a final cry. Beside him, carved into the frost-covered stones with fingernails until they bled, were trembling words. "She is not done." The doctor rushed forward and knelt beside the body. Sir Reginald, the king's physician, a man who believed in logic and science above all. He reached to examine the king's chest, but recoiled in shock. A thick stench burst from the body, overwhelming everyone around him. Rotting fish. Salt water. Decay. The same putrid scent Henry had smelled the night she last begged him to hold her. The doctor stumbled backward, coughing violently. His vision blurred, the world spinning. He grabbed the fountain's edge, trying to steady himself, but his knees buckled. His skin turned gray. The veins in his neck bulged like snakes struggling to escape. He collapsed, twitching violently before going still, eyes wide in terror. The last sight burned into his stare. A woman's silhouette standing in the archway. Hair dripping like seaweed. Skin colorless like a corpse pulled from the ocean. A trail of black water spreading from her feet. Someone shouted, "The Queen is back from the grave." Chaos exploded. People trampled over each other trying to flee, shrieking prayers, crossing themselves, calling on God. But the fog thickened around them, turning the courtyard into a drowning pool of white mist. No one knew where Anne's ghost was now. But everyone could feel her. Watching. Smiling. Waiting to claim the next soul. Because the curse had already begun. And death was coming to every person who betrayed her. To be continued. The castle was abandoned by midday, the surviving guards too terrified to move through the halls. Word of the king's death spread quickly, but no one dared enter the palace. The stench of rot carried for miles, twisting through the village like a living thing. Mothers clutched their children and crossed themselves, dogs barked endlessly but never approached the gates. Yet one man, Thomas Whitaker, historian and private investigator, ignored the warnings. He had been studying the secret histories of Henry VIII for years, and whispers of Anne Boleyn's curse reached his ears. Armed only with a notebook, a camera, and a lantern, he stepped into the great hall. The air hit him like ice water, heavy with decay. Every step he took left a wet imprint on the marble floor. He froze, noticing faint handprints, tiny, skeletal, dragging something across the stone. His camera flickered as if trying to capture something unseen. Then a whisper brushed past his ear. "Leave, or join him." Thomas spun around, lantern shaking, but no one was there. The fog thickened, and a shadow moved in the corner of the hall. A woman's form emerged, flowing dress soaked in black water. Her eyes glowed pale blue. Her lips curled into that same cold, calm smile Henry had seen centuries ago. "You've come to learn my story," she whispered. Her voice carried the weight of centuries of rage. Thomas took a hesitant step back, heart hammering. I want to know what really happened, what you are." And tilted her head, the hair falling over her face like dripping seaweed. "What I am, is what happens when a king fears a woman's power more than God. I am the truth he tried to bury." Suddenly, something moved behind her. Another figure, twisted and broken, rose from the floor, a creature with limbs bent the wrong way, skin stretched tight over ribs, head tilting at an impossible angle. Its wet, scraping footsteps echoed across the hall. Thomas stumbled backward, whispering prayers. This is impossible." And floated closer, voice soft but sharp, "Impossible is what happens when fear grows unchecked. And now, it's your turn to witness it. The creature lunged, and the fog swallowed Thomas. The lantern fell, shattering, leaving him in total darkness. But in that blackness, he could hear it, dragging, breathing, whispering his name. And then her voice came, right behind him. Do you smell it? The smell of death, of betrayal, of what they did to me. He turned, and glimpsed the truth in a single horrifying moment, and Boleyn was everywhere. Not just in the chamber, not just in the halls. She was the castle. She was the air. She was the shadow that would never leave. Thomas screamed. The fog swallowed Thomas completely. His screams echoed off the stone walls, bouncing back at him distorted, like a chorus of thousands. He ran blindly through the corridors, tripping over fallen debris, slipping in pools of black water that smelled of decay. Every turn led him deeper into the palace's heart, where the air was thick, heavy, and alive. From the shadows, Anne's voice floated, soft and cold, "You cannot escape me, not here, not ever." Thomas's lantern, if it could still be called that, flickered weakly, casting pale, trembling light. And in that light, he saw them, centuries of victims, faces twisted in terror, floating just above the floor, reaching with skeletal hands toward him. Henry, the guards, Cromwell, even servants long forgotten, all trapped inside the palace with her. Their mouths opened in silent screams, eyes hollow, shadows stretching and twisting like black rivers. He stumbled into the throne room. The huge windows were shattered, letting in pale moonlight, but it offered no comfort. The throne itself was gone, replaced by a black puddle, moving as if breathing. And there she was, Anne, hovering above it, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The smell hit him fully now, thick, sweet, putrid, like rotten fish mixed with salt and blood. "You see now," she whispered, "power is not in the crown, it is in fear, in betrayal, in what you leave behind." Thomas tried to run again, but the creature, the one that had followed her from the shadows, blocked the only exit. Its limbs bent at impossible angles, head cocked unnaturally. It hissed, wet and low, the sound vibrating inside his chest. And descended slowly, her wet dress dragging across the floor. Her voice, soft yet filled with centuries of rage, promised only one thing: the curse will never end. It passes, to anyone who dares uncover the truth. And now, it is yours. The shadows surged, closing in. The fog swallowed Thomas entirely. Screams, wet dragging sounds, and the unholy whisper of her voice echoed into the night, carrying beyond the castle, into the village, across the centuries, reaching even to 2026. Outside, the wind carried a smell no one could name. Rotten fish. Salt. Decay. And the villagers whispered, terrified, "Do not go near that castle. She is still there, waiting." Anne's laughter, cold and eternal, rolled across the hills. The curse was complete. The story was no longer history, it was forever. The end.